Hi everybody, I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclear proctologist.org, and you can call in if you're catching a live show at 709-589-4406. If you want to call at a later time or text me, feel free. If you want to do interviews, you can text me or call me at that number. A little louder. Music ignites 19% of your brain that you never use, only if music, we don't know for sure, but it's not, apparently it's not active unless music is heard. Atoms for Humanity, the A-10 Warthog, but most militaries have turned their backs on humanity and used depleted uranium and call themselves patriots, destroying the ecosystem forever. This is a model of the Fukushima radioactive fallout covering the planet in just 19 days. This model here is 468 hours when it gets to this stage. The radiation is still coming out of Japan. The 11th anniversary is just around the corner. And we have a poll tonight because Japan has polluted the entire planet with deadly radioactive fallout. Should Japan apologize for contaminating the entire planet with deadly Fukushima radioactive fallout? And somebody obviously made a mistake and voted no. This is not a game. This is your future, your children's future, if you're lucky enough to survive this stuff. You got 13 votes. We're off to a running start. Let's get after it here. Climate hawks joined a debate on Ukraine. We're going to cover Ukraine. We got Elon Musk. We got a challenge for him. And we're going to dedicate the anniversary, the 11th anniversary show to Elon Musk. Elon Musk, a piece of disappointing human, basically, is what that creature turned out to be, didn't he? Not a human, he's a creature at this stage. Same as the climate hawks are creatures. Radiation is climate change. Radiation is global warming. Invisible clouds from 100 miles up all the way to the bottom of the ocean floor, pulsing energy every second because of releases and accidents, but generally just releases constantly from nuclear power plants worldwide and their fuel pools, of course. We'll get into that coming up. Climate hawks join the debate. Yeah. So, like, Putin can go F himself, and so can Zelensky. He can go F himself. And the victims will be the victims. They'll be the displaced and the slaughtered, not the politicians. They're never victims, right? Remember that. You're the commodity. Remember that. They don't work for you. You're the commodity for them. Regina Man shares experience while in Ukraine. Imagine if he was coming back from helping the Taliban or helping Russia. What would the headlines say? War in Ukraine fuels commodity surge ahead of Saskatchewan budget release. War in Ukraine fuels commodity surge, and we're talking madness, by the way, worldwide. Commodities are skyrocketing. Obviously, this is part of the plan. A farmer in western Saskatchewan watched grain prices jump in Canada. Canada and Ukraine grow similar types of wheat. And Ukraine is growing it in a nuclear wasteland, remember that. And the increase is helping ease the burden of drought-stricken 2001 in Canada caused by Fukushima nuclear meltdowns, radioactive fallout, killing the bacteria in most of the country, so the forest and the litter doesn't break down like it's supposed to, which is what we've seen happen after Chernobyl, the world's second worst nuclear accident after Fukushima. Alberta NHL clubs supporting Ukraine. This is not something we've seen, say, like when Vietnam happened. We didn't see everybody baking cookies to raise money for the military-industrial complex's weapons so Ukraine can fight off the baddies, did we? And in fact, 51 years ago today, at Len Sun 719, United States military had 1,000 bombers in the sky over Vietnam at the one time, and hundreds of helicopters. It was over 100 helicopters shot down on this day 51 years ago in Vietnam, where they also chemtrailed the country for 9 years with Agent Orange. People say chemtrails are not real. You're literally stupid when you say that. You're actually stupid. There's over 136 ski resorts in the United States, goes up and seeds the clouds with chemtrail technology to make it snow on the ski resorts. But the military used it for 9 years over Vietnam, where each year there's minimum of 3 million disfigured children with deformed limbs and faces and bodies because of the Agent Orange. War's not a business. War is evil. People say, oh, no, it's just a business. No, it's not just a business. They're actually evil people. Here in Canada, the Russians are not allowed to wear their colors, but everybody's encouraged to come in and demonize a country that's capable of destroying the planet. Really great move. Big, smart move. Let's taunt the most dangerous country on the planet with the most weapons. The media's people making war-themed eggs for Ukraine. That's news. If you say, I support Ukraine, they'll take your picture and make a story of it. It's the strangest thing we've ever seen. They don't do that for the Palestine or Iraq or Afghanistan or Boko Haram victims. They're doing it for Ukraine because Russia is attacking. And Russia, the president of Russia is a dictator of Russia for 23 plus years. That's a dictator at that stage. Former KGB spy on top of that. And his parents worked for Stalin during the bloodiest siege that we seem to forget exists. He's not even human, is he? He's so desensitized. He's worse than the kids today that play video games. He's completely desensitized to any rationale. You can't call it a war. The whole thing is madness. There's no winners in war, by the way. And scumbag CNN, I'll show you a clip. This is how degenerate CNN actually is coming up. Hockey players plan to host a benefit game with proceeds to go to Ukraine. I should have a little benefit for proceeds to go to Ukraine. I get millions of views. It's twisted and bizarre. The war doesn't need to exist is the whole problem. And I feel for every single victim. I'm just absurdly angry with the media that I know as a perpetual lying machine. And to see them all jump on this and evict emotional responses from attempting to elicit a response, a physical type of response from billions of people. And it's a well-orchestrated, well-used public relation campaign is all you're looking at. All of this is a public relation campaign. The media that is running these stories are yawning their way through it. None of the stories show you the writer's humanity. None of the stories show you the writer's emotions. None of the stories have integrity to them. They're just blah, 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 blah today. It's zombie stuff. They're zombies. We've been covering all these medias for years with their perpetual lies about nuclear. That's what we do. Like, there's another... They can't open their mouth about nuclear without lying for some reason. So, but you got all these emotional responses happening. It's very confusing because I'm not used to this. Neither are you. And so for the last week and a half, it's been what? With these endless emotional responses that we see going. And I'm only touching a fraction of them at best, what's actually out there. They're dragging in the entire planet, and by doing this, what they're saying is they're getting the whole planet to okay a nuclear war, basically, with Russia. The whole planet will be screaming for a nuclear war. Nuke those bastards. I can see it now. It's out there right now, actually. The whole world turned into a frenzy against Russia. Russia's sitting in idle. Russia hasn't even kicked it into first gear yet. When Russia unleashes, and it will at some point, in a very, very near future, its incredible arsenal, Ukraine is going to look like a picnic. And Ukraine ain't no picnic. They're keeping men up to 60 years of age in the country. They're not allowed to leave. And the women are the only people allowed on the trains out of Dodge and Poland and everywhere else. No men allowed. Unless you're a superstar, of course. I got one of those stories coming up. Chernobyl Hospital organizes to send medical supplies to Ukraine. But a lot of the money they're raising for Ukraine is going to the military-industrial complexes to pay for the weapons. There's only one winner. It's the military-industrial munition factories, the purveyors of misery itself. Do you get what's really going on here? What I'm doing is I'm looking at the big picture saying, well, they went into Chernobyl and they set the precedence that they're not worried about radiation fallout. And they're getting the kinks out of their system, basically, by doing it on top of it. A dry run, so to speak, for what's coming. Ireland likely to be more open to collective defense after Ukraine invasion. So the military, in other words, go buy a bunch of military equipment, military missiles, military bombs, and military munitions, and cluster bombs and everything else. Ukraine Air Defense Forces down 52 Russian air warplanes and 69 helicopters. Does that make any sense to anybody? With targeting advice and coordinates from the Americans, who, as far as we know, could be up there in satellites helping them with lasers, because they actually exist. Soviet accepted Ukraine's nationhood with a UN seat. And of course, the Soviets don't exist anymore. So I may have missed it, but does anyone mention the fact that at the creation of the United Nations, which is 193 militaries, by the way, the USSR negotiated separate seats for Ukraine and Belarus. Of course, these were independent countries that were in no way to be seen as part of the Soviet Empire. Well, Russia now seems to think differently about separate nationhoods for Ukraine. There's a bit of a frog. Hi, everybody. Ukraine aid growing as lawmakers shape a big budget bill, $12 billion. Just what we're seeing is all these countries looting the taxpayers, the country itself again, and a lot of the money is going to go to weapons. The majority of all the budgets we're looking at are going to go to the military weapons producers. I'm going to impose more sanctions, and don't even get me started in if you use nukes is put into on the phone to Vladimir Putin. Russia alone is not to blame for this situation, says the phone. Pardon me a minute, Mr. President. You can just put that one over there with the other missiles, which is Vladimir Putin. They're both getting basically the same people are creating the weapons. Russia is restricting social media. Here's what the idiots want you to think. Oh, no women and children allowed. Stay there and die. Ukraine crisis increases risk of traffic and exploitation and maternal deaths and sexual kidnapping for sexual slavery. This is what you see after all of these events is all the predators show up, and a lot of them are militaries, which will set up brothels around the new military bases with kidnapped war victims. We can never have a future, see? You just keep repeating the same Groundhog's Day over and over and over. The military can't exist without destroying everything. And the weapons manufacturers can't survive without endless wars. The stock market can't survive without the endless wars. For International Women's Day. And the trains are heading out of Poland full of women and children at best. No males allowed. Coming in, yep. Going out, no. Men aged between 18 and 16 are required to stay and fight. And the majority of the more than 1.5 million, 1.7 million refugees today currently fleeing are women and children. So, a war's on TV is soldiers out in the battlefield, wherever that may be, where there's no community. And they shoot at each other, blow each other up, and have a great time. That's what they signed up for. What we're seeing, though, is urban war. So if you put one tank in your city, the other country now is entitled to bomb your city out of existence to try to find out where the tank is to. Or bomb your city because there could be a tank there. These are clearly war crimes and crimes against humanity, and just clearly evil and despicable and disgusting. And these people that are doing this do this for decades and decades and decades. And if somebody killed the fuckers, they wouldn't do it for decades, would they? The next ones wouldn't have the same incentive because they wouldn't be getting away with it. That's how we used to do it in the old days. And now we got Zelensky, so-called president of Ukraine, conscripting children at 18, 19, 20 years of age. They're still children, for goodness sakes. And up to 60 years of age, got to stay and fight with no training and no idea against a machine that when it finally unleashes, like they're shipping in Stinger and Javelin shoulder-launched missiles, which is probably what's taken the helicopters and planes out of the sky, no doubt. Single use, just pull the trigger and run. Don't even have to aim it after. Just aim it, pull the trigger, the missile will do everything on its own. Russia wasn't expecting that to happen, but Russia will get it together, and the slaughter will be just idiocracy. Enemy has retreated again during Ukraine Navy hit a Russian warship. There's zero chances that that ship that the Ukrainians are using couldn't be sunk by any plane Russia got. Russia can hit it from 100 miles away. Russian troops say they're desperate to quit the war in Ukraine on calls with loved ones. See, you don't even know what's propaganda because the media that is supplying all this has an absurd legacy of lying. Has an impossible legacy of lying. That if this was your friend instead of a media, you would never talk to them again the first time you met them because they lie so much. So they're intercepting phone calls from Russian soldiers to their loved ones. You know they are. There's apparently 300,000 IT professionals as we speak. Probably 6 of them sitting on the show. Demoralized Russian soldiers want to quit the army and say they are being massacred in Ukraine. According to an intercepted phone call to friends and loved ones back home in Rusky land. Ukrainian government is handing out tens of thousands of guns to its people. He also claimed it hampered the invasion by Russia. Everyone here has an assault rifle. Everyone, the soldiers said. Ukrainian military estimated Russia's lost more than 11,000 troops since the beginning of the invasion. And so Russia planes, when you look at these fighter jets Russia got, armored skin covering. It's got speeds that are impossibly fast. And it's got so many different munitions and abilities. Air target range 120 kilometers. Air-to-air missiles, air-to-surface missiles, anti-ship missiles, anti-radiation missiles, cruise missiles, rockets, bombs after TV guided, laser guided, satellite guided, TV, laser, bomb, general purpose bombs, blah, 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 blah. The list is absurd. And these incredible machines can't beat Ukraine with professionals at the helm. It's just nothing adds up, see? This comes alongside a reported loss of 1,000 armored personnel carriers, 999, 454 cars, 290 tanks, 68 helicopters, and 46 planes. Russia doesn't use planes anymore, do they? They just use jet fighters. Putin's Air Force allegedly lost 9 aircraft in a single day on Sunday. So they're saying all of these losses are Russia. And 12,000, 11,000 soldiers dead. Joint statement on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, UK, Canada, Netherlands. So our disaster, Justin Trudeau has gone to Britain. He's traveling around the world, gone to war. With no approval from our parliament, no declarations of war, but he's gone to war. Incredible betrayal, completely out of control. And the only person who can stop him, he's down there visiting right now, is the Queen. The Queen's the only person that can get rid of the Prime Minister in Canada. Well, the Governor General, to be exact, here in Canada, is appointed by the Queen. And she can dissolve Parliament and suspend Parliament, rather, and fire his ass if she wants to. But we can't in Canada. Because Canada doesn't even exist, see? We, the leaders, United Kingdom, Canada, and the Netherlands, are appalled by Vladimir Putin's. See, it's not Putin's unprovoked and brutal invasion. It's Russia. It's the New World Order. It's the World Economic Forum. This is a horrific attack on the democratic, sovereign European nation, as well as a clear violation of Russia's obligation under international law, which is United Nations. The United Nations Charter that has sovereignty, but no sovereignty, but has sovereignty almost over most of the planet, stealing the planet from under all the countries. No country exists. If you're part of that, you're no longer a country, see? We will not spare any efforts to ensure the violations of international law in Ukraine are investigated. And that evidence is gathered that the perpetrators are held accountable. Why not get down to Palestine, go back to Iraq and Vietnam and Afghanistan and Bosnia and Serbia and all the other places you massacred and do the same thing? See, this is designed to get the world population to want a nuclear war with Russia. We got to do it. The people wanted it. 3 weeks ago, we had martial law in Canada for protesting. They're going to drop all restrictions, everything, on the 14th of this month in Canada without reservation across the country. And 3 weeks ago, they enacted martial law because that's what people never even wanted that much. They just wanted to have their lives back. And so there's something bad going on here. This is why the UK, Canada, and the Netherlands judges joined the largest referral to the International Criminal Court in history to expedite an investigation. It's also why we welcome the urgent establishment of the UN Human Rights Council, of a commission required with a strong investigative mandate. And we stand ready to provide the necessary cooperation and assistance to support the prosecutors from, you guessed it, United Nations. United Nations should be prosecuting the same people asking them to prosecute Vladimir Putin on top of that. We also condemn in the strongest possible terms Russia's use of force in the direct vicinity of Ukraine's nuclear power plant, which in my opinion, it's only my opinion because I know how things work, and I've seen the response in the media worldwide and listened to the narrative, and there's a lot of precedent says that they started a little fire on the outskirts of the nuclear plant site themselves, and then said Russia was shelling the plant. Because that's what they said. They're still saying that today, in fact, that Russia's shelling the nuclear power plant. So the population worldwide will think it's when everywhere they go, they see the same narrative. The disgusting media. Well, it's one great big public relation firm. And it's evil. It's unbelievably evil, your media. It's hideously, odiously evil. It insists... Never mind. The UK, Canada, and Netherlands are both within NATO, or three of them within NATO. Ukraine, Russia updates. Zelensky warns of new attacks as Putin forces face fierce resistance, and the peace talks are to resume. The war in Ukraine is now in the 12th day, and this is going to be the endless war by the looks of it. Shows no sign of ending his unprovoked assault. Again, you see these connotations constantly. It's designed to flip the whole planet, turn everything, all the aggression on Russia, Stop asking questions about what the coronavirus is going on. And basically, there's going to be attacks upon all the countries that are sending weapons. That's no doubt part of the plan. But you're also going to see biological, chemical weapons being used to cover up the die-offs from Fukushima radioactive fallout, which is the cover story is coronavirus. They released a real virus, but it's not the virus, the deadly virus they're claiming it is, and the evidence for that now is overwhelming. And so they're going to release a biological weapon to cover up the die-offs from both of... This is extermination. We're being exterminated. Ukraine president, which is laughable because he's crying to all the media, all the Pepsis and McDonald's and all the gene companies and every business on the planet to shun Russia. It's the strangest. There is no precedence for any of what we're seeing. It's totally the wild, wild west. He calls for a global boycott of all Russian products, including the oil, and which is what we're seeing. And the stories come up where Britain won't unload the oil. America is thinking about ditching it. But what's that going to do? Well, if you went to the gas station the last couple of days, you know what that's going to do. If you're trying to heat your house, you know what that's going to do. And the commodities being brought to your communities, you're going to see the prices of everything go skyrocket because of transportation. But that's just a very tiny, tiny fraction of how this is going to hurt your life forever, how it's going to destroy any possibilities of a future and ultimately snuff out the majority of the planet in increments over the next few years. Macron, which is the French piece of shit, keeps an open line to Putin as war in Ukraine wages. Scumbag media, just degenerate, despicable, hateful, disgusting, parasitic media. While most of the world is shunning President Vladimir Putin over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, well, most of the world is shunning. This is so easy to see. Just this repetition that, we got to shun Putin. Over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, one of the few leaders keeping an open line of communications is French president. Because nobody else wants to talk to him because they're too busy trying to get you to raise money for the military-industrial complex. Canada it's the damnedest thing I've ever heard tell of. You couldn't make this up if you wanted to before it happened. Canada takes directions from Putin rival to sanction 10 more Russians, which is oligarchs, very wealthy people, who probably made their wealth 20, 30 years ago, and going out and stealing their yachts and their mansions and their businesses as a way of getting at not Russia, but Vladimir Putin. It's the sickest, but it's all, you can see these connections all go to the World Economic Forum, which is a despicable, disgusting, parasitic traitor to humanity. U.S. seeks to calm fears in the Baltics that Putin will not stop in Ukraine. If Putin wanted to, he could just walk right through Ukraine and hit the next country on the other side. They haven't even, what they got there is nothing compared to what they have at their fingertips. Russia's reckless aggression could lead to a third world war. Well, the fact that they invaded a white Anglo-Saxon country is 100%, because they usually only pick on the vulnerable people that can't fight back, like Muslims, for instance, and Africans and impoverished people, particularly They hate natives. We see this over and over and over. Russia's reckless aggression, Lithuanian president warned, could lead to a third world war. Deterrence is no longer enough. So you got all these countries, NATO countries on top of that, and United Nations destroyed countries that have been captured by United Nations or NATO, which is 30 NATO countries and all militaries. So those countries have all been captured. They don't exist anymore. They're military pawns. And then the United Nations is it's madness, but have to stand up. Dozens gather at Surrey, British Columbia rally in support of Ukraine. But see, what does that mean? Rally in support. Send more weapons? Demonize Russia and everybody in Russia to get at Vladimir Putin? Because that's what you're being told by the media. That's what we're seeing. McDonald's and Pepsi and Uniqlo continuing operations in Russia despite Ukraine invasion. But McDonald's had announced, we got the headlines earlier, that they were pulling out of Russia. Now apparently they're not. Political pressure is building on companies to halt business. Political pressure is building on companies to halt business in Russia. Well, there's not much pressure. If the Ukraine president sends him a Twitter message or a Facebook or something, then the company has to pull out. That's what we're seeing. I've never heard tell of nothing like this. Large shippers have suspended container routes to and from Russia. And many Western countries, from Nike and corporate and home furnishing giants IKEA to energy majors like BP. And BP, of course, they had a big campaign years ago in 2005. And that's how come we're stuck with the carbon footprint. They had a major oil spill and they blamed on you for using oil. It was your fault. Not their fault for having shit equipment, but your fault because you use oil. And now you have United Nations seized on that, and there's genocide in the whole planet with carbon footprint. Levi Strauss suspended its Russian operations. Lego's not going to ship any more toys to the children. It's collective punishment, see, on both sides. It's not a war is what I'm saying. These are just pawns. They're being moved off the board. They want to excite the planet, turn the planet against Russia. Russia is ostracized. They're losing all of their revenue streams. They're cut off by all the big banks. They're pissed off with the world, right? And NATO is supplying weapons. United Nations is poking their fingers in everybody's eye. All you need is a match to go off and boom, everything is going to go to shit forever. And that's coming. There's no way around this. United Nations Security Council to discuss humanitarian situation in Ukraine. United Nations. Dana. Security Council. How many friggin' subsidies does United Nations have? Because they control every facet of everybody's lives. The victims are just year after year after year after year after year after year we see this madness, but this is different. The United Nations Security Council on Monday, 193 militaries, on Monday will hold a meeting to discuss the deteriorating humanitarian situation, which is wink wink cover story for how do we get to war with Russia. After more than 1.7 million, mostly women and children, have crossed the borders into Central Europe. The men stayed home to fight. No, they're conscripted. Unless you're a tennis star or a football star, you can get on the train with the women. Angry dock workers in UK refused to unload Russia oil over Ukraine war. This is what I mean, right? Probably not angry dock workers. It's probably just management was told don't unload the oil. And the scumbag, degenerate, coward New York Post posted that. The British government has banned Russian ships from docking at its ports. And the loophole allows Russian oil and other goods to be transported to the country using foreign flagged ships. Now remember, we got 60 years plus of America demonizing Russia, Russia demonizing America. That's their boogeyman. And then China and North Korea are there to fill in the gaps when they want to be cronies. Then they just go demonize the other two and get back to hating each other in a couple of months. Russia oil, other goods to be transported to the country using foreign flag ships, which is what they've always done. That's how you get around it. Levi Strauss, a symbol of freedom in the Soviet era, suspends sales in Russia. The apparel company will also donate more than $300,000 to nonprofit organizations aiding Eastern European refugees. They're moving everybody out, by the way. The 11th anniversary of the planet being covered in radioactive fallout is Friday. So we got a little blurb blurb there tonight. Should Japan apologize for contaminating the entire planet with deadly radioactive Fukushima fallout? We have a resounding yes, 92%. I mean, is that asking too much to apologize for murdering all the species on the planet? That's what this war is all about, covering up the omnicide and ecocide that's going on because of Fukushima radioactive fallout. That's a model, and the model is until March 28th, which is 17 days. So in 17 days, the model shows. These models are only based on venting. They're not even based on the actual inventories from the nuclear meltdowns. If you see that, you'll cry. British mercenary plans white helmet operation for Ukraine. Mercenary. Guns for hire. He wants to go in and rescue the victims because he's watching Hollywood movie too much. To help civilians wounded in the fighting, or just comrades that are not supposed to be there, I wonder. Ohio vodka maker to donate sales to Ukraine. Most of the money is going to go to buy weapons to give to the people with no training in Ukraine to fight off the Ruskies. The Ruskies' job is to idle there and don't fight back too much because we need this to last till we get everything organized. Columbus-based Watershed Distillery announced Monday it's donating 100% of its vodka sale profits during March and April, because that's a good slave, to the World Central Kitchen to feed the Ukrainians. And guess what? You're talking 30 million people are running out of food as we speak. Just give it another few days, it's going to be no toilet paper, no electricity probably. Many 311 relate with 15 nuclear reactors there. It's enough to make you want to bang your head into a wall. So this is a 20-day model of Fukushima radioactive fallout covering the planet. You've let the model continue to run for a couple of weeks or a month. The rest of the planet is going to be covered. It doesn't stop coming out of there. It's a continuous plume covering most of the planet. A continuous plume, pulsing energy at 186,000 miles per second. Every second. Heating up the planet. This has been going on for over 76 years, since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so it's been continuously piling up. But it doesn't go away, see? It bioaccumulates until there's nothing left, only it. Many 3/11 related deaths in Fukushima country came after repeated shelter relocations. They moved them into places that were just as radioactive as the places they left. Now, these people, a lot of the people, weren't evacuated for weeks or even months. They lived in a nuclear wasteland. The government refused to evacuate them. And so they got brutal doses. The original doses were inconceivable, by the way. But they're adamant in the nuclear industry that nobody got even hurt. And I'll show you about that coming up. After repeated shelter relocations. So the whole planet got covered in radioactive fallout. That's another model of the Xenon 133 for the Norwegian Institute of Air Research, covering the planet. And just, that was April the 4th. Let the model run for another week. It covers the rest of the planet. Major U.S. newspaper, time to quit nuclear power altogether, threatens the very existence of humans, civilization as we know it. But hey, Elon Musk calls for Europe to raise nuclear power output, and they show a picture of him laughing. Issues challenge on radiation concern, and when he's a lot younger. We're going to do the anniversary on Friday, March 11th, here in Canada. And we're going to dedicate it to that disgusting parasite right there. One of the things we want him to do is apologize for what he's saying, and want him to tweet out this picture here of all the media faking being at Reactor 4 fuel pool. Now, he says he will go anywhere in Fukushima Prefecture to prove the radiation is safe there and eat the locally grown food, he said. We want him to go there, to the left. Now, he's going to show you the people to the right and say it's nice and safe. The people to the right are claiming they're in the building to the left.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
So he'll probably try to get you to listen to Arnie Gunnarsson. Arnie Gunnarsson, I got him positioned where the fuel pools at Fukushima Reactor 4 should be. And Arnie used to make the assemblies for the fuel pools, but he doesn't know they're gone at a Reactor 4.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
Right, so we want Elon Musk to go down there. We want Elon Musk to take her by her hair and drag her to Reactor 4. It's a joke, by the way, in case you don't know any better. He has urged Europe to increase the use of nuclear power. He took to Twitter, his weapon of choice, the coward, to say that Europe should restart dormant nuclear power stations. It's critical to the nation as well as international security. Now he says noted that nuclear power is better for global warming rather than burning hydrocarbons for energy, adding that the risk of radiation is much lower than people believe. This is France's model of Fukushima radioactive fallout. This is a 16-day model. So in 16 days, the entire planet is covered in radiation. March the 26th is when that model stops. All your oceans, all your continents covered. But Elon Musk, he said the risk of radiation is much lower than people believed. Maybe he should go down to Chernobyl and tell these kids how lucky they are to get irradiated. He said, pick what you think is the worst location. I will travel there and eat the locally grown food on TV. Now, we had a comment a couple of weeks ago that he went there right after the accident and ate the local grown food to prove that it was 100% safe. Now, he never went there, obviously, because it was a nuclear wasteland. Originally, it was brutal. It's still incredibly brutal for the next couple of 100,000 years. He said radiation risk is much lower, much lower than most people believe. Well, he can go down there and tell the homeless at Reactor 4 how harmless it is, maybe, just to prove that he's not a coward. How about that? That's in Reactor 1. Reactor 2 completely liquefied and gone China syndrome down into the earth. Maybe he can go down there and show us how cool it is. And then there's Reactor 3, which is the highly lethal mixed oxide fuel. He can go there and tell us that that's a 190-foot building. Because that's the official picture, claiming that everything is okay. When the building doesn't even exist anymore. And not only that, Reactor 4. You got 4 reactors with decades of reactor cores in the fuel pools, and Elon Musk is trying to claim that it's great down there. Well, there's one community there that the extreme increase of mortality caused by cardiac problems from radiation, by the way, but they won't admit it. They say, no, this is just a weird death spike, might give the creeps to some people. In a single month, in this one community, was 12,700 extra deaths by heart attacks compared to any other year and that month. You can go down and eat some of that food there, Elon Musk. Says he will travel to a highly radiation location, eat the locally grown food on TV. Well, like, you got farmers, lunatics, government-sponsored morons, growing food right alongside of millions of one-ton bags of radiation. Because you're not going to get sick right away, but it's coming in a bad way. He said Musk claimed he visited in July 2011, which I challenged a couple of weeks ago, by the way, according to a press release from Solar City, which his company bought in 2016. So he owns the company that reported he was there in 2011. There's another street he might want to avoid. 7 people died on this particular shopping street. That was in the first year. 7 people dropped dead on a single street. Do you know of another street on the planet where that's happened? In 100 years, let alone in 1 year. Insider was not independently able to verify whether Musk did or did not eat locally grown food, as he claimed. I guarantee you he didn't. I guarantee you that he doesn't deserve to be doing what he's doing anymore. He doesn't deserve to be on this planet with everybody doing and enjoying what he enjoys. To claim that it's harmless when there's so many victims is a horrific betrayal. It's the opposite of what a human is supposed to do, Elon Musk. Children with heart problems after 11 becquerels a kilogram bioaccumulating in their bodies. The schools with over 1 million becquerels a kilogram, and that's after they cleaned it up. These are absurd numbers, by the way. You think Elon Musk is going to go down there and pick out this food, cook it, and eat it? These are 1-ton bags of radiation. There's around 60 million of them. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. And if your children now are probably eating it every friggin' day because everybody is sitting in silence, and Russia's another distraction, just like the coronavirus from this genocide, omnicide machine. I'd like to see Elon Musk go down there and write on all of these bags, Elon Musk. Go down and write on the bags, Dana is wrong. Go down and write on all these bags that radiation is not as bad as you think it is. You degenerate, disgusting, despicable, revolting parasite, you. Go mark on all of these bags how wonderful radiation is. Go tell the academics who produced these models of the radioactive Neptunium-239 dispersal how harmless radiation is. It's so revolting, it's unbelievable. It's so disgusting. He should be a journalist. He's so good at being disgusting. Booklets touting Fukushima plant water discharge angers schools. What? This booklet saying that the radiation that's in the tanks they're going to dump in the ocean. You can drink it right out of the tank. Now, they delivered 2-point-something million booklets to school children across Japan to stop harmful rumors. Now, the principals in the schools, in grade 1 all the way up to high school. And all the schools are furious that the government is doing that, which is awesome, by the way. The reconstruction agencies, they arrived in schools along with supplementary textbooks of education, Ministry on Radiation. The handbook for elementary school pupils described the processed water as so safe that people eating or drinking it would pose no health risk whatsoever. This is what it looks like currently down there. There were about 150,000 of these sites originally, where they picked up 1-ton bags and 3% of the land only, of course, referring to the radioactive substances, calling it tritium. This is the brainwashing on a whole different level, with over 2 million booklets delivered to the schools. He said there were no health effects, and that kind of water is already being discharged in the oceans all over the world. Well, first off, we're not pouring water over melted reactor cores anywhere else in the world and then discharging it into the ocean. There is tritiated water being released in the ocean, but tritium is not the only thing that's in the water. It's a disgusting industry. These are 1-ton bags that he picked up. There's only a fraction of a percent, by the way. To prevent the spread of groundless rumors that cause reputational damage. And their anniversary is Friday, so propaganda. Over 2 million booklets to school children from the first grade all the way up. It's unbelievable. There's an interesting thing about... Now, the reason the tanks were used was to trick you and deceive you and manipulate you. So first we're talking about the filtered water. Let me take you through that. Try to give you some context. Okay, so the water filtration system that's in there in the booklets they're talking about is the ALP system. TEPCO to the back. Now they had two systems: the Riva system, which is France's water filtration system, and the ALP system, which is Toshiba's system, I think. August the 12th, 2014, TEPCO to abandon the Riva water filtration system. Once they used it, they couldn't get close to it again because it's so radioactive. So it didn't get used. For the last 3 years, the system has been unused and kept out of operations. TEPCO, April the 21st, 2014, TEPCO is unable to bring contaminated water issues under control at the Fukushima Daiichi. This was the Advanced Liquid Processing System, also known as the ALPS, has yet to function reliably. That's 2014. TEPCO, the utility, which was nationalized, is actually Japan government itself, which operated the Fukushima Daiichi plant, promised to treat all contaminated water, which never done anywhere else on the planet, and certainly is not going to be done on a large scale at this place because they're just degenerates. A goal is now amidst will not be realized that the water will be filtered by 2015. Now, these dates are important. 2014 is right, 2014, and 2000 for the Riva system, 2014, 2014 for the ALPS system. Remember that for after. TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operations have not having an effect at Fukushima. This is where they were pumping the water up from behind the plant so it didn't run down the mountain through the site. That didn't work. And they failed to deliver a promise on $1 billion fence, so-called fence, that was going to keep the radiation in, right? That didn't happen. And that the ice wall is not meeting expectations. Well, it's not working. They admit the ice wall can't work. In fact is, why would you build an ice wall when you can put a real wall there? What kind of kooky, despicable, twisted, sadistic idea was that? They allegedly used 260,000 people to build the ice wall instead of 20 to build a real wall. And then when you work out the numbers and the money they had, it meant that 260,000 people would have made around $1,100 each if they bought no equipment whatsoever and no ice wall. So 260,000 people worked for free, is what they're saying. All they do is lie. They don't know how to do anything else. They're caught now in perpetual lies for 11 years and the nuclear industry for 76 years. New map of radioactive iodine released by the Americans, flying over it at 1,000 feet above it with their Geiger counters 1,000 feet above it. Showed 3 million becquerels per square meter. I just see Elon Musk go down there. I'm going to shit on him, buddy, on Friday, non-stop. All Friday is Elon Musk take a giant dump. I'm going to go print out pictures, take it in the woods, and put dog shit on it, because that's all's left in the woods now. There's no animals there anymore because of Fukushima. Fukushima #1 power plant. I showed you models of the radioactive fallout worldwide, right? Okay, so 2014, they had nothing filtering water. And if you read the stories, what you find out is that the filtration system became so radioactive they could never get near it. You can't change the filter. Here's another one I want to touch on with you about this story, because these people are insane. Elementary school in Japan is using water bottles to shield the students from radiation. Wrap your mind on what I'm going to tell you here before we get back into Ukraine news. An elementary school in Kuriyama City, 34 miles away from the nuclear meltdowns, is using water bottles to shield the students. They fill the water bottles up, this is pictures of it, in the classroom. They stack it along the walls, inside and outside, so that the students get less of a dose during class. Rather than evacuate them, the nuclear industry rather keep them there, and gave them dosimeters that they can't read and has to be shipped to universities who are going to study the kids. And then if you look at that part of the country, that second row there is becquerels per square meter of just gamma, not counting alpha, neutrons, beta, etc., just gamma. Koriyama City is 162,000 counts per minute per square meter of just gamma. This is impossible numbers, by the way. That's by United Nations on top of that. Okay, and so just let me finish that out before we move. The tanks were built to trick you into thinking that they didn't poison the Pacific Ocean originally. There we go. So 2014, in late 2014, they had no water filtration system whatsoever. Okay. So August 2013, a year before those other stories, they had 1,000 tanks, large tanks across the site. In 2014, the following year, they had 1,200 tanks, which is the same year where I just showed you they didn't have any filtration system whatsoever. Now they had 1,000 tanks. Now each of those reactors were capable of filling up all those tanks 6 times a day. They need 1 million gallons a minute. Risky stalemate as science battles human fears. So this story was 2017, and they had 900 large and densely packed tanks. I counted the site. There's only 750 tanks, by the way. And in 2021, they got 1,000 tanks. In 2022, they still got 1,000 tanks. 1,000 tanks, 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2022. You really think they're filling up tanks? And if you fill up the tanks with the radiation we're talking about, you can't get back on the site. If you fill up a single tank, not all the tanks, just a single tank. 1.4 million sieverts. 5 sieverts is a lethal dose. 1.4 million is a lethal dose from miles away. Almost everything is out of control, EU Energy Commissioner. France says Japan has lost control and the French should leave the country. Swiss embassy evacuated Tokyo, 200 kilometers away from Fukushima. Tokyo had lost almost all control. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. And it is. Korea called Japan's handling of Fukushima incompetent. So back to that story of the leaflets, the books, 2 million books being passed out to school children this week in Japan in order to brainwash the children that everything is harmless and innocuous and benign. Suffering negative effects of groundless rumors of contaminated products in the aftermath of the 2011 tremor. Not nuclear meltdown and radioactive fallout, but tremor. So even in the report, they can't tell you the truth. But surprisingly, all the schools were outraged that the government had sent these booklets out to the children. And it's a nuclear. You see everything in the background? That's 1-ton bags of radiation. I'd like to see Elon Musk go down there and write on each of these bags for the whole day that Dana is wrong. Okay, Elon Musk? You want to do that, bro? Let's keep going there. It's madness. They actually put 3,000 of these fake Geiger counters in a single town to trick people into staying there. Think about it, 3,000. And recently they started taking them all down in increments. River fishing limits remain 11 years after the nuclear disaster. They're using a shock system, I think. Don't quote me. Or some kind of a chemical to knock out the fish, I guess, actually. In Minima Soma is 10 to 20 million becquerels per kilogram in some places. You got to multiply that by 68 to get a square meter. That's just gamma. They're not checking for alpha or beta or neutrons. It's absurd. But the fish there, there's 25 rivers and lakes in 5 prefectures where you're not allowed, including Chiba, right alongside of Tokyo, by the way. Where's those numbers to? Difficult to return zones. I'll say difficult, idiot to return zones. 9,000 becquerels per kilogram in some fish in 2018, and up to 12,000 becquerels per kilogram in 2018 in fish there. These are stunning numbers. Switzerland banned freshwater fishing for over 30 years because of Chernobyl. The whole country, freshwater, was brutalized by radiation. The radioactivity concentrations in tree leaves and river algae were several thousands to tens of thousands of becquerels in the river algae and tree leaves. And Elon Musk is saying, no, it's all good, man. I'm Elon Musk. I'm better than everybody. Go ahead and eat the stupid, murderous food and die so we can go to Mars and pretend that we're special. A nuclear global risk back in the Ukraine. A nuclear power plant meltdown in Ukraine could now be a real risk. Well, look, I actually done research expeditions on the Pacific Ocean for 6 years after Fukushima nuclear meltdown. I wasn't going to do it. It might take a second, but and let me show you just a little bit of why I'm upset with Elon Musk tonight. And I use a TriCaster. I don't know if anybody's familiar with what that is. They're basically, you can buy a small house for the same price. And generally the idea of this kind of equipment is that it doesn't lag on me, it doesn't leave me hanging like tonight. I went to the wrong one. Here we go. Anyway, looks like I'm not going to get it tonight. Okay, we're almost there. Ooh, here we go. First off, let me play this clip
worse
for
than
you.
thought. Studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German marine research institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
And so I launched a research expedition year after year. It was one of the boats. We still have that particular boat. And both of them, actually. That was one of the expeditions. They would last about 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean, doing species counts.
We're leaving Port Hardy.
And this was another boat.
Goodbye, Port Hardy. So we're going for no man's land now. We'll go out to the kickoff about 30 miles away, 35 miles away, anchor off tonight with a beach line.
And so I do the whole coastline, and here's what I discovered was that all the species to your left are permanently exterminated. They never came back. We done the research expeditions for 4 to 5 months a year without coming home. And year after year, and what we discovered was a total extinction event because of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. I'm going to cover that extensively this Friday. If anybody's interested in that, they can come back and catch the Elon Musk beatdown on Friday. I'm going to curb fucking stomp Elon Musk on Friday, you piece of shit. There'll be no mercy from me on Friday from that fucker. Excuse the language. Because Fukushima has threatened mass extinction around the world. I, unfortunately, went out and proved that it is a mass extinction event. And we went out and repeated the experiment. The species never came back. It's an extinction event. Let's get back into the Ukraine, because that was going so good. A nuclear power plant meltdown in Ukraine could now be a real risk. Well, I'm worried that Ukraine will attack their own power plant, not necessarily if they release radiation, like to blame it on Russia, and then now you're seeing stuff like this. I think myself that was on purpose. I don't have evidence, but we do know there's an incredible long history of governments attacking themselves and blaming it on another country to get into a war. I know what you're saying. Danny, you're full of shit. Well, listen to Patrick Clausen. I put together a less than 1 minute video, and I put the graphics in it to help articulate what he was talking about. How do we get to war with Iran, basically, was the topic of discussion. But he invoked previous wars and how we allegedly got into them. You might find this interesting.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
So he's saying somebody needs to attack America and blame it on Iran because the current president is not getting us to war quick enough. And there's a lot of these goblins out there. Japan to mold Russian oil import ban based on national interests. Japan can't afford to say no to oil, by the way. So what's going on then? Why are everybody willing to drive up commodity and prices for the most vulnerable people? And right now, most of the planet is pretty vulnerable because of the scamdemic has bankrupted almost all the small businesses on the planet. They can't survive an inflation like is happening this very moment as we speak. New industry blooming in disaster area, which is growing flowers because you don't check them for radiation. But when the flower dies, eventually that radiation is liberated into the environment again. It'll do that cycle hundreds of millions of times before it's finally harmless. Chernobyl museum officials warn about danger of nuclear plant attack. Chernobyl. And no fly zone should be imposed over Ukraine, which means you got to go out and shoot down all the Russian planes, all the missile defense systems. You got to go to war with a country that is invoking using nuclear weapons from the very beginning, from the very foundation of this thing. The threat to the whole globe from a nuclear power plant meltdown. And as I showed you the models earlier from Fukushima radioactive fallout, that's exactly accurate. It's immediate. And because a nuclear meltdown is different than a bomb. Bomb blows up in a millionth of a second and picks up 1 million tons of dirt or something, atomizes aerosol, ionizes and radiates and distributes that through the jet streams and the currents worldwide. A nuclear meltdown does the same thing, but it's constantly hemorrhaging out there for years and years and years. It's not over in a millionth of a second. It might last for 1,000 years, emitting radiation, huge amounts of radiation like Chernobyl and Fukushima and Santa Susana, the Mayak, etc., etc. The Sellafield, United Kingdom. All the dumping into the oceans. The threat to the whole globe is accurate. And they got Ed Lyman, right, from the Union of Unconcerned Scientists, which is part of the Manhattan Project, Union of Unconcerned Scientists. Ed Lyman, we got him many times saying Chernobyl is worse than Fukushima. Multiple nuclear reactor meltdowns with decades of reactor cores and fuel pools also missing. Chernobyl was a brutal 200-ton graphite reactor, brand new. But Fukushima, 40-year-old reactors, were 800 tons each. Pure uranium, pure plutonium, and even more so in reactor 3 in Japan was mixed oxide fuel. It's reclaimed uranium, plutonium from missiles and fuel. It's 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, according to the government. Why does Ukraine have a Jewish president? I don't know. Wall Street Journal option, hit for the heroes of Ukraine. Democrat republics agree on a plan to suspend trade relations with Russia and Belarus. Suspend trade relations. Which means inflation and brutal, unsustainable inflation that they're going to plan on sustaining. Maybe not, because you got all these countries, I don't know, like anybody else, you're guessing, but it's a good guess on our end because we're following this tightly and closely. And what you're seeing is these patterns over and over and over that are not normal. They stand out like a sore thumb. That's why we're doing what we've been doing now for over a week, is these patterns are really important. And why this is the very early stages of something terrible for the entire planet, not just Ukraine. Right? They got us. This is how it works anyway. They set a precedence, and then it never stops after that. This is how they like to operate. U.S. inflation set to heat up further as the impact of the Ukraine war intensifies. And you can see gas prices worldwide now skyrocket. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has dashed any hope U.S. consumers might have of relief from skyrocketing costs, with prices at the gas pump in the last week surging by the most in nearly 17 years, and prices for other goods like food ready to march higher, because it costs so much more now to ship it. This is not an accident. This is well thought out, everything we're seeing. The surge in U.S. oil prices, which hit $130 a barrel, But the spike is seen driving overall inflation higher in the months to come. And this is just going to accelerate till you can't even afford a loaf of bread here in Canada. The average U.S. price for regular unleaded gasoline on Monday was $4.06 a gallon. 5 cents shy of the record high. And we're in the very infancy of this. Canada, it's about $7.60 a gallon US. It's around 9 something Canadian. EU, it's $1.91 for the cheap gas, a litre. EU secures over 10,000 hospital beds for refugees. So all the plans we're seeing are very clear that they're going to evacuate Ukraine. And then what? Why not have Ukraine surrender? Why destroy 30 million plus million people's legacy and lives? Why do that? Because there's something big on the horizon, yeah? Putin's alleged love child deletes Instagram, which I disagree that people should attack the children, right? And the media, in a incredible slur, love child. Ukraine war detonates EU food security debate, and will sustainability be collateral damage? Well, really, because of the radioactive fallout worldwide from Fukushima, the crops are going to fail, right? That's what we're seeing in the last 11 years, and it's accelerated. And they need a boogeyman to blame it on. This is what we're seeing. Right, COVID was the kickoff, right? They're not going to get rid of COVID. Now they got this one to drive up the inflation, to starve out the majority. And the problem with the Fukushima radioactive fallout was it killed a breadbasket for most of the planet, which was the biggest ocean on the planet, the Pacific. It's a significant event in our history, in the annals of life on our planet. Ukraine wants tech companies to sever ties with Russia, and tech companies are happy to do it for the most part, right? Google, Apple, crypto, all happy. What do you want us to do? We'll do it. Facebook, what do you want us to do? Twitter, Google, doesn't matter, YouTube. In our smart and peaceful tool to destroy Russia's economy, which is collective punishment, same as Russia's doing it in. It's collective punishment. War is stupid, no matter how you look at it anyway, but they called Elon Musk to provide Ukraine with Starlink internet terminals. It's unbelievable. That same creature now is out claiming radiation is harmless. Chicago bakery donating half the cookie sales to Ukraine. I've never seen nothing like this, where all the celebrities are getting in onto it. Which one is this from? The Real Housewives raised $25 million. And bless her heart, she's going to do good with it. But a lot of the money is going to go to the military-industrial complex for weapons, yeah? Because they're actively raising money for weapons. And they're getting free weapons from Canada and 14 other countries, particularly anti-tank, anti-aircraft weapons. And Putin is still just idling there. He's not kicking it into second gear or first gear, rather, yet. Olympic karate medalist is ready to fight in Russia. So all the media is we've never seen this before. Probably because they're white, right? Has no previous military experience, but says he's prepared to protect the community where he was born. Ukraine Supreme Court judge joins the front lines. It's a Supreme Court justice on the front line with automatic weapons. Apparently everybody in Ukraine got an automatic weapon this year. You can't beat Russia. If Russia wants to win, Russia will just come in and stomp their guts out. Global food crisis becomes inevitable. due to Ukraine's crisis. Global food crisis becomes inevitable due to Ukraine. That's an astounding statement. Ukraine and Russia, China offers to mediate Putin and Zelensky as Putin forces continue to attack cities. So this is 100% crimes against humanity to do this, right? It's 100%. It's crimes against humanity to not surrender, as far as I'm concerned. They're going to destroy your country, and you're going to have everybody leaving the country on top of that. So you don't even have a country. There is no country left if this is ever over. There won't be any country left. And what's Russia's goal? Is Russia's goal just to go there and beat up or get beat up? You really think Russia, that flattened Syria, can't handle Ukraine? China offers to mediate, so there's something going on that is not shown itself yet, but is apparently in the near future we're going to see attacks worldwide from Russia. China offers to mediate as Putin's forces continue to attack cities. Again, we see this invoking. These are war crimes, 100% war crimes. That's collective punishment. It's considered a war crime. And so it should be, right? And when you look at, you need these images. You got to have these images to get the whole planet pissed off and wound up, right? This is normal for every war. This is what you see constantly. And it's not that I have 100% sympathy for them, but I get what's going on. You can't tell the story in one dimension because there's so many facets and minutiae and details. Shells rain down on Ukraine's cities despite cynical offer of safe passage. Again, we see the framing of the narrative is from all the media worldwide, is meant to invoke a response from you, the commodity. An underground resistance movement for Ukraine, can prosper, but only if the West provides help, aka munitions, aka NATO and United Nations. Vladimir Putin criminal investigation of Ukraine highlights some ugly truths about the US and NATO. And the fact that Putin is trying to justify the unjustifiable in Ukraine does not mean we must ignore the US actions that fueled his narratives. Well, Russia spent 10 years fighting the 10,000 mujahideen in Afghanistan, right? Then America spent 10 years fighting the 10,000 Taliban in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then a couple of hundred of them went to Syria and created ISIL. So Russia went there and got the 10,000 ISIL that they had. And a couple of hundred of them broke off and went to Africa. And then they had 10,000 Boko Haram. And so America's been down there bombing the Boko Haram, where in each one of these countries, your millions are dead, millions are missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans, and destroy the pensions of the countries to get 10,000 bad guys over and over and over. We see that exact number. And look it up yourself. The targeting of civilian population infrastructure is a hideous act that belongs in the annals of major nation-state crimes alongside the U.S. invasion of Iraq. About time somebody invoked that one now, isn't it? And the U.S., I've been doing it every show, but the U.S. and other NATO nations are in dubious positions to take a moralistic stance in condemning Russia, that they do so with zero recognition of their own hypocrisy, provocative actions, and history of unbridled militarism, particularly in the cases of the United States. And in recent days, U.S. and NATO officials have highlighted Russia's use to ban weapons, including cluster munitions, and have said their use constitutes violations of the international laws. Yet they use cluster bombs in Vietnam and Ukraine, or Afghanistan and Iraq themselves. And both U.S. and Russia refused to sign the Convention on Cluster Munitions. The U.S. has repeatedly used cluster bombs, going back to the war in Vietnam and the secret bombing of Cambodia. And in the modern era, both President Bill Clinton and George W. Bush used them, and Barack Obama used cluster bombs in 2009 attack in Yemen. And the majority of the evacuees are women and children. And then they produce these weapons and ship them to places like Saudi Arabia, which uses them regularly in attacks in Yemen. How Russia military activities in the Chernobyl exclusion zone could have far-reaching effects. Is infamous for the largest nuclear disaster in history. Is not all the media will tell you that, but that's simply not true. Chernobyl is brutal. There's over 3 million children with permanent disabilities on top of that. It contaminated the entire planet, absolutely, and it's horrific carnage to. Hang on. Because it's hard to appreciate, isn't it? I'll show you why, though. I talk the way I talk. And I got a really easy way of telling the story. There's no easy way. I put together a bunch of academic studies that'll tell you the story of radiation fallout. But remember, Fukushima is infinitely worse, but that doesn't mean Chernobyl's not horrific. The influence of post-Chernobyl fallout and birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. Why are you doing studies like that for? Trends in the human sex odds at birth in Europe after the Chernobyl. So all of Europe had a huge discrepancy after the meltdown of males versus females being born, which means less population, obviously, and because there's less women and there's more males, right? But it also sterilizes a lot of the males too. But we've seen this worldwide after nuclear testing. Chernobyl, prenatal loss to 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic from radioactive fallout from Chernobyl. And we also see studies around just research reactors and a huge discrepancy in male and females, which meant everybody had to be radiated, which also means all the animals, insects, and birds had to be irradiated too to have these types of discrepancies. It would have been true for all the species, not just humans, rather. Non-thyroid cancers in northern Ukraine post-Chernobyl. Chernobyl is a wasteland. The congenital abnormality registry in Belarus is also a nuclear wasteland. The truth is more horrific than most people can accept, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Fallout from the Chernobyl accident, overall cancer incidences in Finland, which just shipped anti-tank rockets to Ukraine. Down syndrome time clustering. Down syndrome clusters because of Chernobyl nuclear meltdowns. So a lot of people are confused, think there's only cancer, but there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries will manifest typically before cancer. Cancer is usually latent. Heart problems, liver problems, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. Non-thyroid cancer, the thyroid, the radiation gets in your thyroid. A lot of it is mutated now into radioactive hormones, because that's what your thyroid will do, and distributes that throughout your body. And particularly with children and neonates and infants, it's incredibly insidious. Chernobyl followed prenatal mortalities in England and Wales 3,000 miles away. What are you doing studies like that for? Chromosome aberrations in Norwegian reindeer following Chernobyl. Birth defects and abnormalities, abortion rates in Austria. Lifetime doses to hunters and their families in Sweden because of Chernobyl. And this creature right there, Geraldine Thomas from United Kingdom, she actually kills children with radiation for a hobby. She makes fake studies. A disgusting creature. Incidences of legal abortion in Sweden. You kind of get the idea where I'm going with this, I hope, right? Legally induced abortions in Denmark after Chernobyl. Pregnancy outcome in Finland after Chernobyl. Delayed illnesses for up to 15 years after Chernobyl. Pregnancy outcome in Norway. Early infant mortality in West Germany before and after Chernobyl. Trends in births and birth-sex ratios in vicinity of research reactors. Human sex ratio at birth and residential proximity to nuclear facilities in France. Why are you doing studies like that for? Because the radiation can't be contained. Chernobyl cover out. The global implications, we'll just end it there because I got so many of them, we're not going to get through them all, right? But I can overwhelm you with documentation for any of my assertions because that's why they're assertions, is because I have the evidence and I don't like putting my foot in my mouth. So I always got this shit ready to come out and boom, pow, bang, have a nice day. Because that's how we roll around here, okay? See that one? Down syndrome, schizophrenia from radiation. As Live Science noted, 31 people died in the immediate aftermath of Chernobyl. 31, really? That's it? There's over 600 helicopter pilots from Chernobyl died right away, for goodness sakes. Let's move on because we'll never get through it. Trudeau opens the door to more military spending, which is Canada, we're on to. And we're not supposed to go to war with people. And we're not supposed to be giving the military-industrial complex more money. You'll never get rid of them to keep feeding that monster. Crisis at Chernobyl as exhausted staff survive on 1 meal a day, allegedly of porridge, and 2 hours sleep. Why don't they sleep for 3 or 4 hours? Because there's no reason they can't. And there's over 500 people that work there, by the way. They're held hostage, yeah. You're in a war. Teachers help students navigate misinformation, emotions, and history. This is in America where the children are worried they're going to be drafted to go to Ukraine and fight Russia. Because that's what they're doing worldwide, by the way. They're indoctrinating the children because this is going to be the war of all wars. These are the companies cutting ties with Russia. They're just like they're bragging about it. We've never seen nothing like it. U.S. gives the green light to talk of fighter jets coming for Poland, Ukraine. No, they're not mad. They're insane. The Democrats and Republicans agree on something for a change. Oh, to suspend trade relationships with Russia and Belarus. That's the only thing in their entire history they've ever agreed upon. And that's going to be inflation for their country like they've never seen before. Real smart moves. Canada is planning for a global food emergency. Canada's not known to plan jack shit, which means they know what's in the pipeline. Will Arab oil save the world? No. They got Iran ostracized. Right. You know I'm right. Stop writing. If they're out there, media's going to get that picture. Those pictures will go a long way. That's what the media wants. They want a response from you of that type, particularly. Instead of being out there with a sign saying, will the media please stop lying? Michael Grove warns Russian invasion. This is the 4th time that I've found 911 invoked with Ukraine. It's the biggest invasion Russia's invasion is the world's biggest crisis since 9/11. Oh, I thought coronavirus was the world's biggest crisis. Because they're trying to bury what that one, because there's a tribunal in The Hague right now saying that this was a scamdemic. Not a pandemic, but a scamdemic. American Airlines taking donations in the air. Like we're seeing so many mom and pop, big corporations. You got to pay your tribute to the New World Order if you want to stay in business. Did France really try to cover up the 1986 Chernobyl disaster? Yeah, that's right. They said that the radiation didn't make it past the border in France, stopped at the border. Because I covered that many times over the years. Yes, France did. That's a fact. And France is disgusting, by the way. How France gets its uranium from Niger. So it caused a civil war there 60 years ago because you have really high, very rich uranium, very high percentage recovery of pure uranium. So what France done was they caused a civil war after they nuked the French Polynesians, all of them, until they only had jelly babies. Then they took over Niger, caused a civil war, and that's how they get their cheap uranium for their power. And for over 60 years, they kept the country in a civil war by supplying weapons to both sides, destroying the government, and going in and taking over the uranium fields and gutting them. That's how they got their cheap uranium, the despicable, cowardly scum. U.S. market dies as Ukraine crisis keeps pushing up oil and gas. Think about those words, keeps pushing up. It might get $5 a liter soon. The record high for oil prices was $147.50 in July 2008. They'll crack that in the next couple of days. No inflation relief in sight for U.S. Well, they don't want it. They're orchestrating it. We got the evidence just in the last week now. Ukrainian-born DWTS Pro Maxim, I can't pronounce his last name, Chernobyl, 42, slammed as a coward for fleeing war in Kyiv on a train packed with women and kids, and then going on a media blitz to talk about how he escaped. He fled on a train, which he admitted was full of women and children, because men weren't supposed to be on it. But he's a superstar, so he gets on it. Now claims he wants to go back to Poland to help with relief efforts. He's been slammed by Americans who criticize him for taking up space on a train. These are the war hawks, by the way, too, right? There's nothing they won't do. Well, let him go back and help the victims, for God's sakes. He's got lots of influence. He's seen his evil ways. Now he wants to go back and redeem himself. Riot Games will donate proceeds from in-game passes, Ukraine relief. We got so much of that in the last week. It boggles the mind. Coffee shop drinks earnings go to Ukraine. We got so much of these operations. Everybody's throwing money at the war against Ukraine. But nobody willing to say we're going... Like, what I mean by that is, so NATO is supplying all the weapons and has been for a month before the war to get ready for the war. The whole story is crazy. KeyBank announces support for Hamas. This is entirely orchestrated. They're doing this to the entire planet to finish the planet off. They got it on his back because of the coronavirus. Now they're going for the coup. KeyBank announces support for humanitarian efforts for Ukraine. A $50,000 grant to UN, also known as UNICEF, which is owned by the military-industrial complex known as United Nations, which is the military-industrial complex, them and NATO, which is 30 militaries, right? White House says to prepare for a long road ahead, difficult road ahead. Well, it should be a difficult road for the people that are orchestrating it. There's no need to do this. No need to destroy Ukraine and everything else. There's no need to have this misery machine lit up again like it is. The White House on Monday warned that the world needs to be prepared for a very difficult road ahead. And gee, I wonder what that means. Biden administration providing another $1 billion of expedited security assistance. Security assistance is a new word, isn't it? We've only seen it a couple of times, but it's always associated with weapons to get around anything else. Russia's booby-trapped safe corridors in Ukraine with landmines. That could easily be like the British or the French Foreign Legion or some other country going in and do that to escalate things. For the weapons manufacturer now is not going to let this go. This is bread and butter for Israel weapons producers and McAllister, Oklahoma, which only produces, by the way, dirty bombs, depleted uranium munitions. And the victims have no shelter, will have no way to protect themselves, no way to feed or clothe themselves. Horrible pictures, horrific, unbelievably horrific, heartbreaking pictures. That's on purpose, by the way. Well, first off, there is no good pictures from a war zone. But hey, if that can get you to empty your kid's piggy bank and send the money to the weapons manufacturer, then that's a win. Your media hates your guts. So does MIT, by the way. MIT University, we've covered it many times, several hundred times over the years. These are scumbags. These are degenerate. These are schools of mass destruction, right? It's the students. These students here are the ones that are producing these hideous weapons. Get them young and dumb. MIT community stands with Ukraine. Not with peace, but with Ukraine. Let's give them all the weapons they can use. Russia-Ukraine war sparks surge in coal prices to an unprecedented level. And when I say unprecedented, I mean unprecedented. Coal per ton in 2021, in May of 2021, was around $50 a ton. It's now over $418 a ton. This is absurd numbers. U.S. gas prices near all-time high. Here in Canada, it's $7.64 per gallon U.S. I'm sorry. I get that backwards. $5.96, $6 a gallon here in Canada, U.S. My mistake, I apologize. U.S. gas prices rose to all-time high of $4.10 per gallon Monday. Canada's $6 a gallon U.S. Spartan Nash sends $1 million in aid to Ukraine refugees. They're a big organization. You can't keep up with that, can you? There's so many of them sending. It's like everybody on the planet is supposed to lick a stamp and send something to Ukraine right now. Russia's lack of ground progress in Ukraine leads to intensified missile strikes. Well, NATO countries are shipping just absurd shoulder launch rockets and missiles, Stinger missiles and Javelin and everything else down to Ukraine. And rather than going to war themselves, they're just letting the conscripted victims fight the war because they're too coward to go there themselves, obviously. Russia has now launched more than 625 missiles. America had 1,000 bombers in the sky 51 years ago today. And land sung. Operation Lansung 719, I think it was. 1,000 bombers, not counting all the helicopters, all the tanks and everything else. Trucks, loads of support for Montreal, rallying to raise money for Ukraine. What is a no-fly zone? Why has NATO said no? Well, no-fly zone is the actual Third World War when it comes to Russia. That is going to be that or China. And it looks like China is going to take Russia's side in this when it goes bad. And that doesn't seem to be too far away by the looks of things. Vladimir Putin takes aim at Australia, putting it on a hit list of unfriendly countries. After Scott Morrison gave weapons to Ukraine, which Canada done, Denmark done, Spain has done. 14 countries have also done, and not just. I didn't know. I didn't know Australia had gave them certain weapons. It has to be certain weapons. Benefit concert for Ukraine in Vancouver, Canada this week. Leon Open runner-up donates her prize money to Ukraine. 22-year-old tennis player from Ukraine. The Queen shows her solidarity with Ukraine. Standing in front of blue and yellow flowers, the color of Ukraine. The media is revolting. And look, they got Goblin himself, the Canadian dummy, the disaster known as Justin Trudeau. Russia reportedly sinks former U.S. Coast Guard patrol boat donated to Ukraine in 2019. Really? Is anybody surprised? Amazed? Shocked? I know I'm not. Hell knows I'm not. I took down a bunch of T-shirts from my merchandise shop. Save the Insects, Ban Nuclear Power shirt. I'll get these back up, but a lot of these are still at the site. But this is some of the stuff you can buy at my merchandise shop because we're not selling much. So, save the planet from climate change, close all nuclear power plants. It's one of my favorite ones right there. I need a lot of people wearing that. You can get these little bottles, save the planet, close all nuclear power plants. If you're into that kind of stuff. You can also get pictures of reactor 3 and 4 for your phones. Or T-shirts, and there's different colors in all of these T-shirts. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world with Noah's map there. They're pretty good stuff. You can get mugs. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. Different colors. And we got all kinds of different types of T-shirts. You can get face masks, COVID-19, the cover story for Fukushima Doomsday Radioactive Plume. One of my personal favorites. Backpacks. COVID-19, the cover story for Fukushima with different colors, multiple colors, with all of this stuff that comes in multiple colors. Or face mask, Fukushima nuclear meltdowns and extinction level event. Different colors, of course. You can get glasses with that on it, and the hats. That's right, folks. We got it all. Neck warmers that you can wear instead of face masks. Fukushima nuclear meltdown and extinction level event. If you want to cause a conversation and you're wearing this stuff, you're going to get in a conversation for sure. There's no way to avoid it. So you can get T-shirts. Stop the chemotherapy, cancer, genocide. Use DCA. You can get that on blankets and T-shirts and bags and hats and mugs. We got it all, baby. But I'm going to redo all the shirts at the site soon. I took down 3/4 of the stuff that I was selling there, and I'm going to redo it. And so you can get the earplug cases, so you can start a conversation. Close all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. Now a movement, because you go look up, most of the nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. That's actually evil. That is crimes against humanity. That's insidiously cruel thing to do. Poison people like that. That's hideous and monstrous. And face mask with those on it in different colors. Nice pretty colors for everybody. Closed, it looks like that. Opens, it looks like that. You can get hoodies, close all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. They're great hoodies. You can get mugs and wine jugs. You can get sweatpants. All different colors for this stuff. You can get pillows. Save the insects. Ban nuclear power plants. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. That's a great pillow. And you can get the legging with the full print on it so you can have a conversation. UK Bradwell B nuclear power plant. Genocide by radioactive farm foods. So very interesting stuff. Not hard to look at all. Rain with 20 million particulates of radioactive iodine-131. Stop the chemotherapy cancer genocide. Use DCA. Hard to imagine something more frightening than 5-year-olds marching off to irradiated school playgrounds with dosimeters clipped around their necks. They gave them 90,000 to the students. So we got all kinds of other T-shirts. Save the whales. Ban nuclear power. On the back of it, you got the President and Prime Minister of Japan puking radiation into the Pacific Ocean. And on the front of it, you can get it that way. And then finally, to save the whales, ban nuclear power. I like that. That's a great idea. And you can get them in multiple colors. So get them in different colors. And I think that's a great contribution to society. If you want to have a conversation, you buy some of that merchandise, you're going to have a conversation, buddy. It might, so I get a chop of the pie. I don't do the physical work or nothing like that, but the company does all that. I don't know nothing, right? I get my cut of the pie sent to me regularly, right? And so I don't know who's buying what, or I don't have any names or numbers or nothing. That's all done by that company. And the link below to that site for my merchandise shop is below. It's below. Yeah, one shirt can last a long time. Good observation for organic slant dirt. Okay, so last night when the show was over, I started shutting off everything in the studio, and I overheated. Got really hot, got really weak. My vision got blurry. And this all happened in just a matter of about a minute and a half. I realized something was happening. And I unplugged the internet and turned off my cell phone. Because you don't know, right? We know that they use a weapon now through that way. I recovered about 2 minutes later. No issues since. But it 100% wasn't normal, and I realized that there's something else going on. I was pretty vocal in yesterday's show. I was pissed off on top of that. I have been now since this war started, since Fukushima, actually. Long before that, certainly. I was at nuclear long before Fukushima. But because there's no adverse effects, I recovered a few minutes later. I physically had to strip down and lie down on the couch. And it's winter here. It was minus 17. I had no heat on outside there, and I was burning up. Once the internet disconnected, I started to recover. And so I don't think it's something going on with me. I think something happened to me. That's what I'm saying. By the way, we raised 2 donations last night. And unfortunately, I never got it to pick up a few things I wanted to pick up today. I wanted to pick up a couple of locks for the cameras and change out the ones I'm using because they're really garbage. Like the wire ones. I'll pick them up hopefully tomorrow. I'll get out and do it. And so we raised $60 from James Lucet. And so thank you, James. And Dana Nasana donated a big whopping $600. And it's changed the game. Those two together really changed the game for me. I can pick up all the odds and ends we need to get now. That's a huge load off my mind, and I'm very grateful for that. Just to get that pressure off my back, that monkey off my back for a while is a huge deal. Yeah, and you can buy DCA on Amazon.com. I'll bring it up for you right quick. Because the Amazon is a cure for cancer. Here it is. So you can go to Amazon.com, not .ca if you're Canada, but .com. And you'll have to pay importation fees, but they'll ship it in. And you'll see it'll say ships to Canada on some of these. Ships to Canada. That's pure DCA. That's the better stuff. That's the powder. It's a caustic. It's caustic. And so... but you can order in the pills. Just take the pills, a couple of pills a day, right? And it destroyed all tumors, like the big, large tumors that were squeezing your organs, for instance, and would normally be invasive surgery. It reduced all tumors by 70% in the first 3 weeks and eradicated the cancer entirely in 3 months. Canada banned it 5 years ago, saying they didn't want people treating themselves for cancer with a mineral. It's just a mineral. It's harmless. It's the same as vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, or zinc, or whatever, potassium. It's completely harmless. You can mix it with anything. It's harmless. A chocolate bar is much more dangerous than the DCA. But pure DCA, you want to take a little tiny bit, 1/8 of a very small spoon, put it in about this much water because it's caustic. You don't have to do it with the pills because they're already salted, right? They're 99.9%. That's a cure for cancer. It was discovered about 11 years ago in a university in Canada, and they couldn't even get funding. Let me turn the music down a bit. They couldn't get funding from the university to do trials. No money in cures, is what he said. No. If that was true, then we wouldn't have many of the things we already got. We wouldn't have penicillin. We wouldn't have many things, right? Because, like, they're charging $175 for it, but the hospital will murder you with chemotherapy, and they'll get $900,000, almost $1 million to kill you. Okay, and so we do a quick shout out. That's the end of the show. I got to end a poll. Yeah, Canada's crazy, right? And what do we got for a poll? We got 53 votes. 94% says Japan should apologize for contaminating the entire planet with deadly radioactive fallout. That's the right answer. And they should apologize. And as I showed you tonight, this is not an opinion or a conjecture. This is a fact. James Appleton. Hi, James. Dana Sana. And again, thank you, Dana. And Christian Boyce, who's drunk for the 3rd time today, you said, or something. Port Angeles. Provoke. Good night, everybody. Richard. Robert Peaceware. James Lucet, Elon to go water ski on Lake Karachi. The Death Lake. You used to die after an hour or something, right? It's a great idea. Port Angeles. I'm just going to scroll down quickly through the names. Quick shout out. Chet Austin. I missed you last time, I think. Robert. I always seem to miss a few people when I'm scrolling down. Darlene. Yeah, I think I got attacked last night by a weapon. Kevin D. Blanche. Colette S. Hi, Colette. Hi, Kevin Blanche. Probably gone by now, but Kevin Blanche is one of the most well-known activists, nuclear activists on the planet. And he's been brutalized for the last couple of years by the system. I'm certain long before that, but really bad the last couple of years. It's horrific what the system's got done to him. Big Ben rocks. Hot dog. And I'm just scrolling down, saying goodnight to everybody. We're almost halfway down. I'll speed it up a little bit. Lockhart Robin. Hello, everybody. Because I can only read the names so fast, right? Shivy Ayers. I can't pronounce that name. I tried. It's a couple of years now trying. To call me up sometime. Tell me how to do it, I guess. Organic Slant. Hey, man. We're almost down there now, though. Here we go. We're almost to the poll section. There's just a few more comments after that. Andrew B, which is CFINSTR, is Andrew B. Andrew's been around a long time. Darren James Spencer, good night. And thanks again. John 2N, hi John. Did I get everybody? I apologize if I missed anybody. Looks good to me anyway. We got most people, I would imagine. I'll read through everything later. Yeah, night Port Angeles. And everybody watching this later, tonight, tomorrow, and in the background right now. God bless each and every one of you. Hugs for you and your friends and your families and your loved ones. And I only have the best intentions, but I'm up against a monolithic monster machine, and I'm going toe-to-toe for a long time against this creature, and I despise suffering. Like, it's hard to appreciate how much, but I'm not going to sit in silence at all for the scum, degenerate, monstrous industries, coward industries. We're here to point fingers and not take any prisoners. God bless everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night at the regular time. Hopefully everything goes good. We'll see everybody soon. God bless. Yeah, good night, everyone. Take care.